everyone. My name is Ben Eady, and I'm the Online Media Manager of ModernAnalyst.com, the premier online community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Evolve Your Definition of Traceability. Today's featured speakers are Laura Ward and Steve Fasano from JAMA Software, and the webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the Q&A session. So make sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature of the webinar software. I'd also like to say thank you to JAMA Software for sponsoring this event. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Laura to get us started.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. We really appreciate you being here for today's webinar. My name is Laura Ward, and I am a Strategic Customer Success Manager here at JAMA Software. As a Customer Success Manager, I'm aligned to ensure that our clients are achieving their desired business outcomes and realizing maximum value from their product delivery ecosystems. And then joining me today is Steve Fasano, who is one of our solutions architects. Steve has over 7 years of engineering, design, manufacturing, and product development experience, and has great understanding of the challenges that every team faces in order to see their vision realized through each step of the product delivery lifecycle. Today, Steve and I are really excited to talk with you about traceability, but not traceability in the traditional sense. We're going to discuss how organizations really need to think about new modern traceability and how it can help to solve the product delivery challenges that you may be facing at both an individual level and as an organization, and ensuring that you're doing your job and realizing value. So first I want to talk a little bit about who JAMA is as a company. We're based in beautiful Portland, Oregon. We were founded in 2007, and since launching, our customer base has grown quickly. We now have thousands of users around the world working in JAMA on a daily basis. We work with over 600 customers, many of whom are Fortune 100 companies, and we're lucky to work with some of the world's most innovative companies within the Fortune 100 on a broad range of products ranging from commercial space travel to smartphones to embedded medical devices, as well as a large number of government clients like the Department of Defense and the Federal Reserve. We're very proud to be working with the #1 technology brand, the #1 healthcare provider, and the #1 semiconductor company in the world. Our product delivery platform is helping companies to work more efficiently and effectively and collaboratively, starting with an idea and then moving that idea all the way through to launch with a focus on requirements, change, and test management. So I just want to give you a really quick overview of our agenda and what we'll be discussing today. We'll spend some time talking about traceability and rethinking the concept of traceability. Traceability is a word that's been around for a while, and if you were to look it up today, you'd probably get a very technical definition. But today we really want to give you a new perspective and broaden that concept. We'll talk about how to connect people with the data, which is really where traditional traceability ends and modern traceability begins. We'll discuss the benefits of modern traceability, give you some tips for implementing modern traceability in your own organization, and then finally, we want to show you modern traceability in the context of one example of one solution, JAMA. So first, why are we here? Why should we rethink traceability and how it's different today? Why is it important? Well, when you think about traceability, what might you be envisioning? Maybe you're picturing something like this, some sort of an Excel document. Unfortunately, this is what most people think of when they think about traceability today, something to track data for impact analysis or for coverage. And if you're thinking of some sort of Excel document, there can be lots of different versions and templates out there. People have their own formats that they like to work within. There's really no standards or governance around it. We've here at JAMA have seen every possible variation. But even with all the different formats and varieties, at the end of the day, they're all trying to do one thing. They're trying to link the data. It's all about linking data. The basic understanding of traceability is the need to connect data with other data throughout the system. It's usually done by someone within your organization who's going through and pulling data together from different data sources. Sometimes it can be from old documents. They're mapping the IDs and trying to figure out where things are connected. And it's a very manual process, a very incredibly cumbersome and sometimes very labor-intensive process. And it's usually done for audit purposes. It's a very static approach and can be somewhat limiting. I'm thinking that this might be sounding a little bit familiar to some of you out there. So if you were to look up the word traceability on Wikipedia, this is more than likely the definition that you'd get. It's the ability to verify the history, location, or application of an item by means of documents recorded identification. And clearly this is an indicator of the old way of thinking about traceability, where it's about coverage, it's about identifying gaps in the data, and it's about identifying change and the impact of change, which is only relevant if the matrix you're using is current and always kept up to date. And this is where a living matrix is very, very critical. You can't identify or view the impact of change in a real scenario if the matrix isn't up to date, because then you'd have inaccurate information for which you're basing an understanding or a decision on. So it's critical at that stage to have a current, viable view of the trace matrix that's shared. And this is where traditional traceability starts to unravel and why it's so important to rethink traditional traceability. And the problem with traditional traceability is that it's isolated and broken. It's often out of date, and because it's out of date, it's error prone. Oftentimes it doesn't reflect the current scenario you're working within, which causes inaccuracies. It's also very data-centric. We mentioned this earlier when we talked about how the basic understanding of traceability is the need to connect data with other data. This hits right at the core of the philosophical difference between traditional traceability and what we're talking about today. We're going to dive into this a little bit more in a little bit more detail a little bit later. But traditional traceability also lacks scope. When we've seen or we've talked to other individuals about what traceability typically means to them, the response we get is often focused around an area within traceability, something more tactical and more specific. Maybe it's the requirements down to test cases, for example. It's usually based on some separate need for an audit trail or for coverage. When you're looking at traceability, because it's hard to do and because it takes a lot of time, you typically reduce the scope down to only the items you need to link. But imagine an opportunity where you could rethink traceability in the traditional sense and bring your entire organization together and focus everyone's attention on your company's overall product delivery objective. That common thread, that common theme, that is the fundamental difference we're talking about today. So let's do that. Let's rethink traceability in the traditional sense. But why should we do this? Why should we look at traditional traceability from a different point of view? Well, we believe that traditional traceability isn't living up to its full potential and providing the value it really could. It only focuses on the more tactical elements like compliance or coverage. But what about the bigger picture? We work very differently today than we did even 5 years ago. Times have really changed. The products and the processes and the organizations that we work within, they're all getting more complex. Many more companies are adopting Agile as a new standard of innovation, and the people within a company are so much more involved than they were today than they were before. And social media has really helped to level the playing field and connected people in a more extensible way and in instantaneous fashion, even across multiple time zones. It's no longer about connecting the data. It's about connecting the data with the people. And this is the fundamental difference between traditional traceability and what we're talking about today, connecting people to the data. And that gets lost in the conversation, but it really needs to be front and center because this is so critical to your success. So let's take a step back from traditional traceability completely and begin evolving your definition of traceability. What does that mean? Well, it means evolving traceability in the traditional sense and thinking about traditional traceability in the modern sense. So at its core, modern traceability is fundamentally different from traditional traceability in that it incorporates people and data. As we discussed earlier, the connection between people and data tends to get lost when talking about traditional traceability. But that is what traceability is. Let me explain that a little bit further, what this looks like. We talked about traditional traceability and how it's static. Remember that trace matrix that I showed you earlier and how traditional traceability has historically been used mainly to track data. But traceability isn't static. It's very dynamic. It's a living matrix where people are connected to the data. If we step back and we strip away all the data, all the processes, the tools, the roles, the geographical locations, and we look at what it fundamentally takes to build a product of any kind, we're left with one core understanding. And that is, it takes people to build a product, people working together toward a common goal, people communicating and sharing and helping to build that thing that we all come to work for. And that's a form of traceability, the collaboration, the communication, the decisions that are being made throughout the process. If you were to sit in a room just as an observer and you were to watch one of your teams working on a product from start to finish, you'd probably start to see that inherent traceability in that room begin to surface, the conversations and the expressions of what's being built, how it's being built and why. You'd see people making connections and strengths emerging and roles forming. So let's talk about what modern traceability looks like and what we mean by connecting people and data. One thing that's important to emphasize is that modern traceability is an organization-wide living concept. And what I mean by that is that it's no longer about a trace matrix. It's about an entire organization working together to take an idea or a concept, to decompose all of the information and the components for the different roles in the organization, and to make that concept a reality. When you look at this illustration, you see there's different teams of people in an organization to the left, and these might be stakeholders or BAs or engineers. And then you've got all the data on the right, and these teams are constantly talking to one another about that data, and it's all tied to that one thing that they're building. Conversations are happening all the time. There's data, there's work unfolding, and everyone is performing that work all for the same purpose. There may be thousands of requirements, stories, test cases, and through this complexity, for the outcome, and that outcome might be a product, for that outcome to be successful, these people need to be in alignment and working together and working from the same source of truth so that decisions that are made are in alignment with the overall business objective, and that they're all based on fact. The point here is that everything needs to come together, the teams, the individuals on the teams, and the data. But how does this work? How does all of this come together to solve the problems and solve your problems faster? We'll talk more about how traditional traceability, or how traceability in JAMA helps you to connect the people in your organization to the products that you're building. So you might be thinking, well, this is great in theory, but what about me? What about my specific needs? How does this apply to me? How is this going to impact me on a day-to-day basis? Well, let's break this down and talk about how modern traceability can help address some of the challenges that you might be facing in your day-to-day activities. Let's discuss an example of something that happens probably every day in your life. And let's assume that you're working on a project and you've reached a point where a decision is needed. I want to use this as an example because we don't feel like this is discussed enough. We talk a lot about collaboration and we talk a lot about communication, which can feel very open-ended and could lead to an endless conversation. But there's some point where a decision or a conclusion needs to be reached. And that decision point happens when you've reached a moment in time when you've hit a wall or a roadblock or you're confused. Whatever the reason, it causes a pause because you're stuck. And the faster you can address this pause, the faster you can get unstuck. And the faster you get unstuck, the faster your work can get done and you can deliver your product. And if you're an organization that's building a product, sometimes very complex products, speed is key. You really need to move forward in a rapid fashion. Decisions become a critical part of that. So let's look at that earlier slide. Let's say that one of these engineers gets stuck. Who does she need to ask to get unstuck? Who is going to be able to answer her questions and give her correct information? Has this ever happened to you? I'm sure it has. You've got this question, you just don't know who to go to get an answer, and you're trying to figure out, who's going to give you the best answer. It might be a peer, but more often than not, it's someone who sits upstream from you, maybe a manager or a director or a VP. Whoever it is, you want to be confident knowing that whoever you reach out to for that decision is in direct alignment with the overall business objective. And once you know who you need to ask for help, you can determine the best way to communicate with them. You don't want to spend time searching the hallways trying to track down the right individual. The information needs to be right there in front of you. And before you reach out to that individual, you want to be sure that you can have a purposeful conversation. And to do that, you and whoever you're asking for help needs to have all the context to understand the problem. Do you have all the facts, all the relevant information readily available to you to fully understand why you're stuck? With all the different channels that information can be pulled from, this can get pretty complex. But this is how intelligent decisions are made, and this is where modern traceability can help. All the information, all the comments, all the conversations, all the relevant facts are right there for you in one place. So now you're progressing toward making a decision. You'll want to make sure that everyone who's involved in the decision process has visibility into the information and has the context associated with the problem you're trying to solve. Decisions can't happen behind closed doors or in a vacuum. There really needs to be transparent discussions happening so that the people who are involved both directly and indirectly, know if and when a decision is made and why. And it's important that everyone involved has access to information in real time so that the best decisions can be made quickly and are based on accurate information. Details associated with decision making don't usually come at you in a linear fashion. They're hitting you from all different directions and at different times. And real-time visibility into the context associated with the decision-making helps to solve the challenges of speed and alignment that many organizations run into with product delivery today. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, before decisions can be made, you need to know who and what is going to be impacted both upstream and downstream by that decision. If the decision is going to have an impact, whether that's a negative impact or a positive impact, you'll want to alert the individuals who will be impacted ahead of time. Or maybe you'll decide you want to include them in the actual decision-making process. You'll have the core connected users involved, but as the slide illustrates, there are probably multiple layers of communications happening outside those core connected users. And having that visibility or getting to that hidden person and having insights into those conversations are really going to help you make more intelligent decisions. All of this is where modern traceability shines, making decisions transparent, giving you real-time visibility into the data, the context you need to make an intelligent decision, and helping you understand the impact of any decision you make. Okay, so now you've got a point where a decision has been made. You're finally unstuck. It's important at this stage that the decision is now tracked. Understanding why a change or a decision has been made is modern traceability at its core. Modern traceability ensures you track the decision so that those who are directly involved have all the context around who made a decision and why. It also keeps those individuals who need to know about the change or decision informed so that they know how it impacts them and, if needed, how to respond accordingly. It also helps to ensure that the core business value has been maintained throughout the entire process and everyone is still in alignment. Modern traceability also gives you contextual history. There may be instances where individuals who were directly involved in the project or a decision are no longer with the company, or there may be someone new to the company who needs that project context, or maybe the people who were involved in making the decision in the first place, they just can't remember why a decision was made. So you end up rehashing the details, and this really slows everyone down. And also, the people who benefit from a decision often come in later. As a business analyst, conversations you're having today may have an impact on the product days, weeks, or even months later. So it's critical that you enable people downstream to take advantage of those conversations and leverage the insights you've collected at that moment. Tracking decisions, notifying individuals of those decisions, and providing the contextual history around those decisions will help you to build better products. Okay, so we've gone through an example of how modern traceability can fit into your day-to-day activities. Why else is this important? Well, let's discuss how modern traceability goes beyond solving your individual day-to-day problems and really addresses some of the overarching product delivery challenges that many organizations are facing today. In speaking with our clients, we found that they're experiencing very common product delivery challenges, and the three that seem to surface the most are alignment, speed, and complexity. And I want to dive into each of these in more detail. First, alignment. How do you ensure that everyone on your team, and really everyone in your organization, is aligned to your core business value? Alignment is a term we here at JAMA are huge fans of. It's how you ensure your teams are motivated to build that thing that they're being asked to build. And this can be a struggle for many organizations, and it's something that business analysts and product managers get frustrated with. Modern traceability helps to address this challenge by ensuring that individuals and teams stay in alignment and work together from a single source of truth, so that decisions that are made are in alignment with the overall business objective of the company. We talked earlier about what happens when you've reached a critical decision point. To get unstuck, you need to find who is going to be able to answer a question or give you the information you need to get unstuck. This is where alignment is critical and where modern traceability can help impact the overall outcome of your product delivery. You need to be confident knowing that whoever you need to reach out to make a decision is in direct alignment with the overall business objective and that they know what you're building and why. Throughout the product delivery lifecycle, you're going to have lots of questions and face lots of decision points. All of those little blue dots, those represent decisions in your process as you move forward. And at any given point in your product delivery process, as you move from concept to launch, you and your team might get distracted and your attention may get diverted away from getting to the end goal. So it's important that as you navigate through the process, the core business value guides you every step of the way. And this is important both upstream and downstream. As a business analyst, you need to understand the strategic objective and the direction the company is heading, as well as the market the company is in. And as a product manager, you're communicating critical information and context about your customers and your market back to the rest of the organization. Modern traceability ensures that everyone within your company is always in alignment. Delivering solutions on time is another big challenge that companies struggle with. The quicker you get your product into the hands of your customers, they start getting their feedback back to you, and you can begin iterating, the better. The overall trend today is toward more frequent releases, especially under a software lens. More than 70% of companies are releasing at least quarterly, and of those, many are releasing monthly, weekly, or even daily. And on the software side, the trend is to update almost continuously. But it's not just software companies who are releasing more frequently. With so much embedded software and products, the opportunity to update more often also applies to smart products. For companies to release more frequently, teams have to get through their R&D cycles more quickly. And we found that issues with requirements are the #1 reason for late delivery. And another common cause of product delays is delayed decision making. Teams not working effectively, team members not feeling empowered to make decisions, or missing context to make quality decisions. It can also be a result of decisions being made but lost in emails or meeting notes, or people can't remember why a decision is made, so you end up having to rehash the cycle and rehash the process, and this slows the process down. You end up putting more work into every step of your process and waiting longer for decisions to be made. Imagine as you move from product definition to build that these lines on this slide, they're the representation of decision points. You work, you wait, there's a decision. You work, you wait, there's a decision. Modern traceability enables your teams to work more effectively and more efficiently, and helps you reduce your wait times so decisions can be made faster. The overall result is your ability to get your products to market more quickly. And the third challenge we see many companies struggling with is complexity. More and more, we're seeing organizations and products continue to grow in complexity. We're seeing an increase in the number of products, and with the increase in the number of products and the number of product variation, there's also an increase in the number of requirements and test cases. Everything is growing more complex, and there's an incredible amount of data that needs to be tracked. The average company has about 140 products in their portfolio, and one product may have 6 variances. There could be mobile, desktop, web, multiple platforms, and devices it needs to support. Each individual product is becoming more and more complex. And as products become more complex, there's an ever-increasing need to pull different departments into the conversation. You may experience this in your own organization. Maybe you have a hardware and a software component to your product. There might even be a services component. But each team is going to have its own level of complexity. There's going to be requirements, use cases, test cases, all that fall within each of these groups. But then how do you get these multifaceted teams to work together and cohesively? Oftentimes, you're not going to know who sits upstream and downstream for you. Processes are also increasing in complexity. There are teams involved in product delivery who may not be using a common process or methodology. One group may be using waterfall while another is using agile. Or teams may not be using the same tools. And we often find that even within the same organization, on the same team, there may be individuals working on the same product who are using different solutions. The reality is, what is being built, the organizations that are building it, and the processes being used to build it have all become more and more complex. And this requires that the tools used are more efficient and able to support that complexity. Modern traceability empowers you to pull different individuals and teams into the conversation easily and in real time while maintaining that alignment, which is so critical to the successful outcome of your product delivery. And this is something that Java does extremely well, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. So we've talked about the importance of rethinking traceability and how modern traceability can fit into your day-to-day activities. We also talked about the top challenges that many organizations are facing today and how modern traceability addresses them. Now let's begin thinking about modern traceability and how you can begin to apply it to your world. We'd like to share a few tips that you can begin using to implement modern traceability into your own organization today. So first, look at your current use of traceability. Look at the documentation, the scope, the content. Ask the hard questions. Where did a requirement come from? Are there conversations? Is there documentation? Is there information from other departments, executives, customers? There's probably a wealth of information out there that you're currently not tapping into today. And how are you using traceability? Are you just mapping item IDs to downstream item IDs? Are you providing links to external information? Are you tracking conversations? Are you tracking the synopsis of what the content you are including in the trace matrix? It's a lot of work, but building products is a lot of work. So look at how your team also communicates with each other and with other teams. Are they sending emails? Are they talking over the phone? Are they meeting in conference rooms? Or maybe they're having hallway conversations or near the water cooler. And how are those conversations being captured and documented? Are you confident that key pieces of information shared in a hallway conversation are documented? And how are decisions being made? Now bring those two together, the data and the people. How are the two working together? What are the deliberate connections and what are the hidden connections? And how does this impact your communication and your decision process? And then you also want to evangelize the importance of traceability to the team. Make people aware of the value, that it's not just a necessary evil for audit purposes. It's really something for people who have iterative processes to value as a meaningful way to see their world. And finally, choose the right tool. Can this be done in Excel? Well, yes, it can, but for the amount of work it takes, the benefits you get don't outweigh that work. You're going to find more efficiencies, and you'll be more effective if you use a tool like JAMA, which brings both traceability and collaboration together. This can be very powerful. As we've been discussing, traceability is not just the responsibility of a single team or an individual like a BA or an auditor. It's the responsibility of everyone within the organization. Collaboration should be purposeful by focusing on moving people forward, getting them unstuck, whether that requires answering a question or making a decision. All levels within an organization care about the product being developed, and traceability should be a means to see and understand what is being done and who is involved. Human behavior is such that we respond more positively to who we're connected with, the people, and not what we're connected with, the data, which is why modern traceability is a living thing and potentially a cultural differentiator for an organization. And the shared responsibility and the benefits gained will make everyone's job easier. It's important to know who benefits from traceability. There's a value proposition for each and every individual within your company, and giving them that value proposition is how you get buy-in across your organization. So when we think about who benefits from traceability in a company, we think about the different stakeholders, the developers, quality assurance, auditors, onlookers, maybe vice presidents, executives. Anyone who has a vested interest in the delivery of a product can benefit from traceability. The fact that these groups have the ability to go in and see how everything is connected and who is connected in real time is really powerful. Imagine that kind of view where anyone within your company could see the impact of what they really care about, what's being built, and who's involved. Historically, this has been handled by one person or one team, but there are significant benefits to opening this up to the entire organization. But to make this work, you really need a live environment to ensure all of these different people can communicate in real time. Everything we've been talking about today, the need to be live, the need to connect people to the data, the need to communicate collaboratively, this is all achievable for you and your organization. There are lots of tools that can do collaboration or traceability well, but very few, if any, are bringing the two together. You're going to start seeing this more and more because this is where the market is headed, and the combination can be really powerful. We at JAMA are true believers of this combination, and the companies we've worked with to embrace this have been extremely successful. In our opinion, and through our conversations with enterprise clients, we're all seeing that this is the evolution of collaboration and where we're heading. So right now, I'm going to hand this over to Steve so that he can show you one example of a solution that connects the people and the data and all the conversations and the decisions happening throughout the product delivery lifecycle. We're going to show you JAMA.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Laura, for setting the stage there, and thanks everybody for being on the call today. I think this is an important topic for anyone working with an organization of people that are pursuing a common goal. It's important to keep everyone on the same page, and as Laura said, not just connect the data of what you're building, but connect your team, connect the people to that common cause. And the demonstration that I'm going to walk through today inside of JAMA shows you how, by leveraging the right tool to bring everyone to that central location, we can both do the traditional traceability of information as it's flowing through our progress of our project, and also the modern traceability that we're talking about, the social traceability, connecting all of the individuals to that common cause. So inside the JAMA application, you're going to notice my dashboard here. And the relationship diagram that I'm showing, this is our idea of traditional traceability, the idea that we are cascading items as we get more and more granular, going from themes to epics or use cases to user stories and deeper into testing and defect tracking. So it's important, of course, to maintain that idea of traditional traceability and connecting this data together. But what we're going to get into is, how do we see who's authoring those themes? Who is developing the user stories? Who do I need to pull into a conversation to make a decision or to execute on a vision? And we'll look at that here. So I'm going to play the role of a product manager looking forward to the next quarter of development for our organization and trying to make a decision on what we're going to focus on for that quarter. So to do that, I'm going to look in my set of themes for the current quarter, and I can sort these by priority, or more importantly, I might sort those by status to see which ones are still in the draft stage. You're going to notice, as far as traditional traceability goes, we're already seeing some indications here on the items that we're tracking. So I might see that a certain item is missing that downstream epic from the theme. So we're getting that benefit of traditional traceability. For modern traceability, we're going to look at something called connected users. So who's connected to those items? So if I'm looking at our mobile app improvements and considering that this might be something that we focus on for the current quarter, I'm going to go to my connected users and see who has edited or commented on this particular item. And more importantly, I might want to see indirectly connected users. So who created the upstream requirements that led to the definition of the theme that I'm considering. So here, as I look at the upstream connected users, I might see Peter as a potential candidate here that I might have had a conversation with him earlier where he's a VP and he laid out the strategic objectives, and he felt strongly about certain directions that the company's heading in. And so right from the panel here, I can @mention Peter in a conversation and pull him in to make a decision on what direction we're heading in. So I might @mention him and say, we have an opportunity this quarter to either develop the new analytics reports or to improve our mobile application. Could you help us make a decision on which to focus on? So I'm pulling him directly into the conversation, and we're tying this to that theme that I'm looking at. So we're tying the conversation, the decision-making, to the information. And I'm going to action tag this in JAMA by adding an exclamation point. And this allows me to open this as a request for a decision, tagging that as decision needed. And when I comment on this, this now filters for this conversation awaiting a response. So Peter might get this notification on his email thread, so he can reply directly from email. I'll switch over to an example of an email notification coming out of JAMA. You can see here a conversation between Jackson and I, having a conversation inside the tool, receiving this as an email, being able to reply directly to the email and have that conversation embedded directly underneath, or being able to click through to that conversation live inside the tool, seeing all of the conversation happening and being able to get more context. Or in the case of me talking to Peter, perhaps he's on the run, constantly on the go, and needs to be able to reply directly from his mobile phone. Well, he can use the reply by email functionality, or he may instead see this pop up on his web application on his phone, be able to update that, see the conversation that I've pulled him into by @mentioning him, drop down a description to be able to get more detail about the specific item I'm referencing, and right from here he can make a decision and add his decision into the screen or into the reply panel. So he may say, "Hey Steve, thanks for reaching out. As I mentioned last week, Jackson and I were getting a lot of pressure from both Acme Corp and Intelli to improve our mobile app, and in talking with Christy, she's hearing the same feedback. Please focus on our mobile app this quarter. It will make a big difference." So he has not only made the decision and closed out our thread here, but he's also pulled 2 more people into the conversation. And they're going to get the entire context of the conversation, including what item we're talking about and my original comment. So this is abolishing the reply all emails where someone might be left out for an initial part and lose a key aspect of the conversation. When Christy and Jackson are pulled into this conversation, they're going to get all of the context, and they're going to see all notifications moving forward. Of course, in JAMA, we do have the ability to mute notifications if you decide you no longer want to follow that conversation. So I've actually got the information that I need. I've heard back from Peter. He responded from his mobile device, gave me context on what we're going to be focusing on, and if I update my view here, I see his conversation in line as well. So I've got the information I need. Let's move forward. So as the product manager, I now know what we're going to be focusing on, and now I want to see what would be impacted by this decision to move forward with our mobile app improvements. So I'm going to look at our Coverage Explorer. And specifically, I want to see our themes and our requirements. Now, this is a robust version of the traditional trace matrix, showing us now multiple levels of relationships moving downstream. So from our mobile app improvements as a theme, I can see downstream the epics and even the user stories that are part of that theme and impacted by that decision. And I can see the stage that those stories are in, whether they're open, ready for build, or whether they've already been completed. So I'm going to use this view here to now notify my downstream teammates that we've made a decision, and they're going to need to focus on these mobile app improvements for developing stories in the coming quarter. So again, I'm going to click on my connected users option here. Here you see that I now have more connected users because I've had the conversation with Peter, and he's @mentioned Christy and Jackson in the conversation. So from here, instead of going upstream with our indirectly connected users, I'm actually going to show downstream connected users. So this now lets me see who are my engineering managers or developers that are moving forward with our mobile app. Here I can see Tyler is a key individual that I need to alert to our changes taking place. So I can @mention Tyler in the same fashion that I @mentioned Peter before, and I can alert him to the change, to the decision that was made. So we've made a decision to improve the mobile app this quarter. Please focus on finishing these user stories and adding a few more to the backlog for this quarter. Tyler's now going to get that email, and he's going to have full conversation history and be able to see all of the descriptions and definition of that theme that we're discussing. So we've now reached upstream in the organization to have a decision made, and we've reached downstream in the organization to alert individuals to the change in work that that's going to require. And we want to go one step further with that. We know that by focusing on mobile app improvements, we're going to have to pull some of our team away from the monthly analytics reports another theme that we were considering building. So let's go ahead and look at connected users here and pull individuals into this conversation. So I want to make sure that my analytics dev team knows about the change in focus. So you can see here that in the same way that I can @mention individuals, I can also @mention groups of users. So I might @mention my analytics dev team and let them know about the change that was made. So please finish up the analytics work that's currently open and move over to the mobile app as soon as that's complete. And I might want to also @mention my QA team to let them know that there's going to be a different effort required from their part as well. So here I would @mention my QA team and say we'll need to ramp up on testing for the mobile application since we're going to release the new features at the end of the quarter. Now, I want to make sure that they get proper context. So even though I'm adding this conversation in the context of the reporting theme, I want this conversation to be traceable back to the mobile app improvements theme as well. So I can actually @mention my mobile app improvements. So if I start searching for that, I see my inbox here for mobile app improvements, and I also see the high-level theme from mobile app improvements there. I can @mention that theme, comment, and now this conversation is not only referencing the monthly analytics reports, but it's also referencing the mobile app improvements. And my team, regardless of which item they're looking at inside of my system, will see the full history of this conversation. So let's jump back to the project. So we've now seen that we can use traditional traceability to track the impact of items as changes happen upstream. And we've also seen how we can use this modern traceability to track all of the conversations around a specific item. The upstream conversation with our VP to decide on the direction that we're heading in, having both open and closed decisions to track that progress, and then being able to look at a high level at all conversation in the organization to see the conversation with the analytics and the QA team to update their expectations for the coming quarter, to look at our downstream product manager to focus on specific stories around our mobile app improvements. And we're seeing all that conversation in one place, accessible from email, accessible from mobile devices, bringing our entire team into a central repository so that everyone's working towards the same common vision, and when change occurs, we all respond to that appropriately. So hopefully that helps to give you an idea of this idea of modern social traceability and how tracking that appropriately can impact your organization. And I'll pass it back to Laura at this point to open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, we did have some questions come in during the presentation, and I just want to remind everyone on the line to use your questions box in your GoToWebinar panel, and we're going to answer as many of these questions live as we can now, and then if we can't get to some of them or it involves a little bit more in-depth conversation, we're happy to follow up with you offline on those. So the first question that came in is about adoption, and it's about this person said that they have a lot of users that rely heavily on email, and they're slow to adopt a tool like JAMA. So how do you encourage their participation and capture their knowledge in a tool like this? And so you're able to have that visibility into those conversations that individual is a part of. I know Steve briefly touched on this in the demo, but could you expand on that?
Sure. Yeah, this is Steve. I'll field that one. You know, we see this a lot with organizations, and specifically around organizational change. People have habits that are good or bad, but you know, one of those habits might be relying on that email inbox. And one of the downsides of that is that you can't really easily reference that moving forward. There's no way to go back to a project that occurred 6 months ago and get a good idea of the email conversations that are stored in someone's someone's archive. So by allowing a tool like JAMA to have this reply by email functionality, you're able to @mention those individuals inside of the tool, and when they reply with their input, you're capturing that knowledge, you're capturing that information directly in the tool, tied to the information that you're working on. So even though they might still be using email, it's being tracked appropriately. So I think that's our main approach at making that organizational change, is encouraging people to use that reply by email functionality.
This question that just came in kind of piggybacks off of that question just about capturing information and bringing it into the tool, and this person raised the question of how face-to-face discussions are invaluable. So how does Traceability help to capture this and move it into its online base so you have that information?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, discussions for face-to-face, those are really valuable. I mean, body language plays a big part. Like all of that context that, you know, happens in a conversation in a hallway, like how are you able to incorporate that information? Like how do you pull it into the tool and make sure that that is captured in an historical manner?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. One of the ways that that our users of JAMA are doing just that is by including images and screenshots inside of the collaboration comments. So being able to sketch on a whiteboard, take a screenshot, upload it directly into the collaboration stream, starts capturing that knowledge inside the system. Also, just quick documentation of an in-person chat or an IM chat that was happening, making sure to just log that in the appropriate place, maintaining JAMA as that central place where all conversation surrounding your product development efforts is taking place inside the tool, and just going out of your way that little bit to say, you know, Peter and I met in person, we came to this decision, we're just logging it in the tool to make sure everyone on the team is aware, and for historical sake, that conversation is tracked.
And this is Laura. One other way I've had customers share with me that if they've had opportunities to meet in a conference room or have face-to-face meetings, sometimes they'll have somebody documenting the meeting notes right in the collaboration stream so that they're then sent out to the team after the fact to validate if any key points worth noting were missed or that the facts were accurately scribed.
Great. So we have quite a few questions coming in, and I'm going to try to do my best to group this. We have multiple people who are inquiring about different tools and the integrations that JAMA has, and being able to connect those different teams in the tools that they like to use into JAMA so you maintain that consistency across those different tools. Can you talk about that some?
I can talk a little bit about that. So we absolutely have the ability to integrate different tools. In fact, we have bidirectional integrations with leading tools like Jira, Rally, TFS, and HPQC with configurable field mapping and custom scheduling options. We do have an integrations page. If you go to our website, jamasoftware.com/integrations, you'll be able to get more information on that. But that's a great way of making sure that you're not disrupting teams that are very comfortable using tools like Rally and Jira and HPQC, but can integrate into the collaboration and the requirements piece that JAMA can offer.
We have another question that came in about permissions and being able to control who has the ability to edit things. And, you know, for like stakeholders, like maybe you want them to see some things but not everything. How do you deal with that in a tool like this so you have some control?
Sure, I'll field that one. So JAMA has a full permission structure that can be applied as an admin. So we can control read, edit, and write privileges on a set-by-set basis and a project-by-project basis. So it makes it very convenient to both define the internal roles in your company as to who can make modifications at what point in the workflow and who has visibility into what work that's being done, but also the ability to invite external stakeholders and subject matter experts into conversations and have the permission structure and the security structure around ensuring that they're only going to have visibility into those conversations that they've been explicitly pulled into. So allowing us to invite by email and have that one-off conversation without sharing all of the information about what we're working on.
So we had another question about like version control and determining kind of your final requirement and like the difference between that definition phase and then capturing those conversations as the product delivery process is continuing, and like what the difference between that is and how you, I mean, with all these changes happening, how do you efficiently track that information? Did that question make sense? Sorry, I'm hoping that I was kind of merging a couple of different questions. I want to make sure I'm getting that point across correctly.
Maybe if you could rephrase it again.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So, like, if you have different threads of a conversation happening, how do you determine that final requirement and, like, kind of land on a final piece of your, sorry, I guess, like, just kind of version control in general. Like, if you're having all these conversations, how do you end up on your final? I mean, maybe you want to talk about Review Center a little bit here, or like in the stage where you're having a lot of conversations happening about one thing versus like as the product is going on and you're making decisions further on down the line. I think what that difference looks like.
Oh, okay. I think I understand what you're getting at. So, you know, some of the conversation elements that you saw in the demonstration, you know, these are conversations that are happening during a draft stage or an authorship stage. Something where we're still defining what it is we're building. We're making modifications. We're expecting some sort of change to occur. And so that's happening tied to the requirements so that we can use the conversation as an impetus for edits that are happening and tracking those changes inside of the database. Where that sort of transitions to is that as you're starting to lock down development and say, you know, we're at a specific point in the project where we have agreed on things, and these are more static than not. And in that case, JAMA has a Review Center application where we're now looking for approval, sign-off, and baselining of these versions of documents so that we have a point of record that everyone is signing on to. We've gotten approval, and that's what we're running forward with. So it's important as a process just to have that distinction of how are we tracking conversations that elicit change, and how are we tracking feedback and approval that is more so trying to come to a final deadline of what we're building in a static state. And so JAMA does that by separating out those two conversations into two elements.
I think you did a great job of answering that despite how I phrased that question, so I appreciate you getting the gist of that, Steve. This kind of runs into the next question that I have for you, and it has to do with reuse. So once you have this set of requirements, is it possible to reuse what you have and then for a different project and then improve upon them with slight variations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
go ahead, Steve.
Go for it, Laura. You can answer this one.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's one of the many benefits of JAMA is just the capability of being able to leverage reuse so that everyone within the organization has access to items that have previously been authored, approved, so that efficiencies are garnered and people aren't having to rehash work. So that's one of the, I think that's a key value proposition that a lot of our clients are leveraging today.
Yeah, I'm just sort of expanding on that, but this idea of reusing content is a real time saver. So and it's also linked to this idea of tracking conversation. We heard one anecdote from a current customer that before using a tool like Jama, they were trying to reuse information from old projects into new projects, but occasionally, because they didn't have the context of decisions and the justification for direction that previous product team had headed, they couldn't really get inside their brain to figure out if that also applied to the current project. And after using Jama, now that conversation is tracked with the project that was previously created. So if they have a question about why did we make the user interface look like this versus that, or why did we focus on these product features versus those decisions are logged inside that previous project, and it makes it a lot easier to be able to trust that prior development effort and reuse that content. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the traceability that we've been talking about today.
Great. The next question we have here, and we do have quite a few of them, so I do want to just note for everyone that's out there, if we weren't able to get to your questions, we really do want to follow up with you. So you will have somebody that reaches out after the presentation. But what about attaching different documents or diagrams or incorporating that extra information and context into Jama and attaching it to these decisions? Like, how can you pull some of those external documentations so it is in this living environment and you're able to edit it?
Sure, I'll grab that one. So yeah, that makes sense. So inside of Jama, on an individual item basis, we do have the ability to embed tables and diagrams and images with that rich text description of the content that we're creating. So that's kind of the first approach to getting information in. And we also import from Word and Excel. So traditionally, I think a lot of teams are using those tools that are quite ubiquitous. And so we offer an easy way just to kind of port that into Jama. Going one step further on that, we have the ability to attach files to items in Jama, so that's another way to kind of track collateral alongside the requirements that you're building. And we also have the ability to link via a URL to external repositories. So, for example, say you have Visio diagrams that are being stored on a SharePoint server. You can embed that URL directly inside of the Jama item, and so you might have a visibility, just a quick screen grab of what that diagram looks like, but then the actual content might be stored via a URL on an external system. And there's a lot of ways to be able to kind of balance the different approaches that you use to store all that information side by side.
Great, and with that, we hit the top of the hour, so we are going to wrap up. I just want to make a note, if you'd like to connect with us on LinkedIn or Twitter or try Jama for free for 30 days, you can go to the links or use the information on this slide. Ben, if you would like to wrap it up for us, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Laura and Steve and Ashley, for an informative presentation. Thank you to everyone for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. I wanted to point out that the webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at ModernAnalyst.com within a few days. This concludes today's event.